Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary, distinguished guests, welcome to Ridiculous, the Life of a Clown.
Hello, Tristan Cunningham. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hello.
I would start off by saying, tell everyone who you are and what you do.
My name is Tristan Cunningham, and I am a professional actor / clown, but now I use the title performing artist. I'm sitting there in 2021.
Nice.
See how it fits.
Yeah, how does it go over with clown in your title and bio if you're trying to do professional work?
That's a good question. You know, it's always funny when you tell people that you do clowning, you know what I mean? Because at first they're like, ha, ha, and you're like, no, really, I do. I spend a lot of time studying it and I put a lot of hours into it. And they're like, oh, you're serious? It's like, yep, yes, I am. But I have found in the acting world that people are pretty happy about it because they're like, all right, at least I know this is a person who's gonna willing to take some risks and go somewhere. So it's been a plus in that realm.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, my experience as a clown was that people who came into clown from acting had a certain advantage because they had this level of commitment that that many clowns lacked. And I think there's an inverse of that, where there's a certain level of emotional vulnerability that comes with being a clown that maybe some actors lack in their background. Where do you see the benefits and trade-offs for the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. I think, between you and me, I think there's a lot more clown in acting than people might want to admit. At least the way that I go about clowning, I really think clowning, the characters I play are really human. It's just kind of like a human with a magnifying glass on it. That's the way I kind of think about it. And I think that's, you know, you look at a sitcom on television, they're clowning the way they're moving their body. Lucille Ball, I mean, she was a clown in my eyes.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
You know, so I think it's interesting, the vulnerability question you had, because some of my actor friends who are just actors have come to my clown shows or had been interested in doing more clowning. And the main thing that they say is the scariest part is like, well, what am I going to do? Like, what do I do when I'm up there? Because maybe leaning on lines or having the comfort of having set lines is a comfortable thing. So I do think it can be really good for actors because it's a whole different type of vulnerability. And then it's good for clowns too, because, you know, some clowns are like, I want to say what I want to say and not that line that's written there. So I think it would be good for everybody to do it.
So
you know?
your clown leans more towards improvisational performance when you're doing clown, or well, let's before we get into that, let's roll back a little bit. What drew you to clown in the first place?
That's a really great. It's a really great question. It kind of came to me. So I started in circus when I was very young. When I was 9 years old, I started with Circus Smirkus, which is an amazing circus in Vermont, a youth circus. And I never did clown. Actually, I was, you know, a gymnast gone circus. So I was, you know, at the top of pyramids, or I did teeterboard, or I did, you know, triple trapeze, those kind of acts. I never was in a clown act in circus. But I always loved them. And I'd always be the one like watching them every night, you know, to see the little nuances that the, you know, clowns would do, or the way that it would be different. So I always had a huge love for it. And then I went to theater school at SUNY Purchase, and it was a theater arts and film conservatory. It was a 4-year program. Still didn't do clown. We did a little clown in our Lecoq class. But I still didn't really delve into clown. I did it for classes when it was an assignment. And then after that, I came to the Bay Area to do a show with San Francisco Circus Center, where we met. And I played a squirrel in that show. And that's when the clowning began. And one of my mentors and amazing clowns that you know, have blessed this world is Joan Mankin, and she was like, you're a clown, it's in there. And so she kind of shoved me into that, and then I ended up working with my clown partners and just, you know, delving into clown and working with Jeff Raz and Peggy Ford and you know, whomever I could.
So what do you feel is integral to the work of a clown? Like what makes clown work clown for you? What defines what is and isn't clown to the best that you can. That's a really tough one, but to the degree that you can, what defines clown? What is integral to the work to you?
Yeah, it's a good. Thank you for saying it's a tough question because it's people want it to be defined. I've found a lot, and I'm not sure that I've ever been successful at doing that. But I can say what's true to me and what's real for me. I think clown is this special mid. I think theater and acting is involved in clowning for sure. I think they're like cousins, and I think a lot of like buffoon work that I've seen are more work that's like commedia dell'arte kind of style of work is clown too. I think they're all like these cousins. But if I'm just speaking about clown itself, for me, what I've found to be the most consistent thing is this connection with the audience, and this sort of unspoken thing or rule that happens with clowning where myself and the audience or whomever is on the other side of the performing has decided that I'm agreeing to play, and I'm agreeing to go to this abstract world with you. And sometimes it's just they see your nose, the clown nose, and that's that agreement, unspoken agreement of like, we're now allowed to play. I'm going to play as an audience member with my imagination, and I'm going to let you take me wherever. So that sort of unspoken agreement to play.
That's gorgeous.
Is clowning to me. And then I said it before too. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I said it before too, but also I think the sort of, I think clown. I don't know if this is exactly clown, but I think clowning has this ability that I haven't seen so much in the other forms, where we can laugh at these things where in other forms we might not be able to laugh at. Okay. Kind of taking, like I said, these sort of normal things in life and putting a highlighter on them and making them humorous, whereas they could be sad or not funny or painful, and we're allowed to laugh at them. That was long-winded. Okay.
No, that's great. I think to me, and my personal definitions, I think a big part of, if we go back to the whole idea that comedy has its roots in pain, and that by bringing people to laugh together, to laugh at you, by making yourself the outsider, by making yourself the one who's violating social norms in whatever way the clown is, either by doing something stupid to themselves or whatever they're doing that is funny, that is the surprise or the unusual in that moment, bringing them together as a group gives them a sense of commonality, a sense of strength, a sense of belonging. I think that's a big part of why and how clown works, as well as other kinds of comedy like stand-up that might be more aggressive or defensive. But then you get into buffoon, which can be very aggressive. So
right,
it's all pretty open-ended. So
totally.
Let's talk a little bit more about your career. You came to Circus Center. You started studying clown. Now you're big fancy actor, director, writer, producer, doing real professional performing as a professional performer for a living. So how did you make that transition from clown student to professional actor?
Yeah, well, that was very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah. The transition, all the transitions. I think everybody's journey is their journey. So I want to start with that, and I really started in the beginning thinking like there was one way to do this and there's not. So let's just take that out of the picture. So starting from being in the Bay Area, and throughout getting my degree in acting and stuff, I continued to act throughout. And then the clowning came to be, and it only made my acting better and stronger and make me a better performing artist, my new title. So while I was in the Bay Area, I also was signed with some agencies. So I did some commercial work, and I was doing theater as well as clowning full time, and kind of, was living off of that. And then also teaching, like many artists, we wear many hats. And then there was sort of a pull to come to LA. I got a couple auditions, and I drove down from the Bay Area. And by the time I was in the audition room, I was just like so tired and like couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, let me like trust these signs. And so I decided to come to LA and, start auditioning here, and I have representation here. And so that was kind of like the path I took. I also, in the Bay Area, I was able to join, the union for stage, and then the union for film and television. And so that was really helpful to me, and something that I wanted as a performing artist. And that's another interesting thing, that in circus, there is no union. So that's a whole nother conversation for another time. So I did that. I joined those in the Bay Area. So coming to LA, I sort of had that in my tool belt. And then having done, so much clowning in the Bay Area, and situations where, I felt like were, more terrifying than any theater gig I had ever done at all, as far as clowning, like getting up in front of an audience and working on a clown bit that was, in my opinion, not rehearsed enough, and just, being brave enough to get up and do it, or working on a clown bit that didn't have set things. We were just going to, be experimental with it. After doing a lot of that work in the Bay Area, I was like, I'm not scared, like try and scare me. I've been on stage and not sure what's going to happen. There's nothing scarier than that, So with the tools that I got from clowning, it kind of gave me this thicker skin that's been really useful in Los Angeles.
That's great. That's amazing. How, just on some technical questions for the people who are, coming from outside of the industry and looking to get into it. How did you get representation?
Yeah.
How did you go about getting represented?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the Bay Area, TBA, Theater Bay Area, was huge for me. I think it costs maybe like $50 to be a member for the year. It might be more than that now, but they keep it affordable, and they stand by that. And they post auditions. So I just kind of on their audition for as many things that I felt were right for me, and even things that didn't feel that were right. And I say that to everybody: go for everything that you can, because often people casting things don't know what they want. When you walk in there and that you're right for it, you kind of do their job for them, and they're really grateful for it. So don't hold yourself back. So TBA was huge. And then as far as getting representation for film and television and commercials, which are really nice to book because there's money involved that can be helpful. And I've juggled in commercials before too now, and they've been really big commercials for me in my career. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without, circus training. So I sent my stuff out to a bunch of different agencies that represent actors. And I heard back. I maybe sent it out to 10 different places in the Bay Area, and I heard back from 2. And then I went in and auditioned. And those seem to be the odds often. So keep your head up. Not everybody might answer back, but that doesn't mean that you're not worthy and that you shouldn't keep trying. And then in LA, there's something called Actors Access. And so when I came here, I signed up for Actors Access, and they had this thing where if you pay $40, money is involved in the ways that I went about it. You can do it without that, but it seemed helpful to me. They will shoot your resume and your reel and your headshot out to different agencies that are looking for people that might be your type. So through that, you pay $40 a week, actually. Through that, I got connected with some people.
That's great.
That's kind of technically how it happened. Yeah.
So aside from being an actor, you're also a writer, a producer, and a director. So let's talk a little bit about that. You've written, obviously, as a clown, you're a writer. There's just no way around that. You're a clown, You're going to write material. But you've written a couple of short films as well, yeah?
I have, yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about that, about those, or that process?
Sure. Nobody ever asked me about that side. That side's new, So thank you. It's funny with clowning. it was interesting because I actually, when I worked with my clown partner Paulina Smith for a while, I write notes in like, this is this section, and I'll write I'll name the sections, like this is the section where, you know, Gretchen, my clown character, finds out that she's, you know, a virgin or something like that. That was usually the theme of our clown acts. And then I would write like just kind of words underneath that, like she never knew, or like, am I pregnant? You know, just kind of lines I might say and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I did my clown acts. Nobody else could read those. I wouldn't like, you know, hand them out to the cast. They were just like trigger words for me and like a guide for me. So writing, when I first came to LA, I decided to write a film kind of about my life, talking about pain. You know, I had lost both of my parents by the age of 30. And so I was like, I want to write something about that and tell that story. So I wrote a short film, but it was funny because it got to be, and I don't know if you find this with your work, it got to be too close to home writing exactly my story. So I had to like make the girl have a different job. I was like, this is too, so she had to have a different job and kind of a different line of work for it to work for me. So I wrote that film and I learned a lot about what you know, what works on stage and then what works on film. And it's different, you know, like what I had written for the DP, the camera person to do was like these long passages of like the camera, you know, it zooms in and then we pan across and we see this on the face. And he was like, I just need to know what you want me to do. Like I wrote so many details because in theater, the stage directions are hefty. You know what I mean? They have a lot to them, but in Phil, he was like, tell me what this shot is, you know? So I learned a lot. And then I just did another film in collaboration called Zoom.mov. It's a feature film. It's on Amazon Prime. And we shot it all on Zoom. And that story was written in collaboration with some other writers who've written a lot of films. So I learned a lot about writing for film. And the biggest thing I learned is kind of going back to my roots of clowning, like less is more.
Nice. And the other film was called, Magi? Am I remembering that right?
Maji. Mm-hmm.
Maji.
Yeah.
And the letters right now for pronunciation. Okay.
No, that's okay.
And then you've directed a lot too. You directed Killing My Lobster at one point. Talk a little bit about that process for you. What it's like going in to direct a new show and what it is you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I've directed children quite a bit, but never adult. This was only my second time directing an adult show. Not that there's huge differences, but, you know, and it was terrifying. I realized, you know, I'm usually on the other end and I depend a lot on a director, and I think the director knows everything, but I'm going to tell you right now, when the tables are turned, we don't know everything, but I think it's really about how you hold that space and like checking my own ego. You know, there were times when actors would ask me questions and I didn't quite know. And so I think those were real moments for me of like how, because you also have to, actors want to feel held in that space. Like you, at least, even if you don't know, you know where we're headed, or you know, because if you're like, I don't know anything, you know, actors are like, so what are we doing here? So I learned a lot about being uncomfortable with what we don't know. And I think that's huge as a performer. And what are the sort of best things to do in those moments. And I found, and people from my cast might, you know, might say I wanted to kill her, but I found for me as a director, we tried it all. We tried everything. And for me, that was the most, I think it's as important to know what doesn't work as important to know what does work. They were equal for me. And I was so glad that we tried certain things, because it's like, that really doesn't work. And this is why it doesn't work. And now we know, and then we can get to the path of what works. So I learned a lot, and it was a lot. That is a way of going about it that is a lot of extra work. But to me, the end product was so specific. We knew exactly what we were doing and saying. And so I felt like my actors could stand on stage with pride. So it was a lot, but it was worth every second, in my opinion. They might say something different, though. You should call them.
That sounds very collaborative. I mean, there's a lot of directors who aren't, as I just came out of a terrible experience with a director who every single line had a specific line reading from him. Like every single line he wanted said in a very specific, and it was just like, then do it yourself.
Yeah.
And it was,
I mean,
I'm glad I got out of it, but I did a couple of live streams with them and then left the project. But it was, so having a director who's collaborative and who wants to work with you and grow with you is super important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, let's talk about that for a second, because that is like something I've experienced a lot. Like the line reading thing, like literally the hairs, when you said that, they stick up. Because the thing that happens is that that will never be your line. You will never have ownership over that line anymore. Because you have, so I think it's really, really important. And I understand it, because when the clock is ticking, this is another thing, as I said, I will never let time define the work we do. And the stage manager probably want to kill me too, because she'd be like, we have 10 more minutes to work on this one specific scene, and then you have to move on. I'd be like, we're not there. And I get it. That's why directors, I think, bark and say like, just do the line like this, because it gets nerve wracking and you think you're going to run out of time. But I think we must never do that. Help an actor, help a performer, give them the path to find it and own it themselves. Like, I think it's just essential.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're a great director, Tristan. That's what I'm looking for in a director.
Well, again, call them and you'll see.
Okay. So speaking of directors, this kind of segues. The best director I've ever worked with was Gherkin. I'm not sure if you ever worked with him, but by far the best director I've ever gotten to work with. And
I can see that.
He's down there now doing the Idiot Workshop, which was Wet the Hippo, which came from We Are Nudes. And they've got a whole big clown scene going on down there. What is clown like in LA? Are you getting to do any? Is it still something that you get to perform? Is it still an active part of your performance life?
Yeah, so I know about, so that group has been brought up to me a couple times. So just like they definitely have made a name for themselves and people know them in that light. And that's been exciting for me. I haven't taken the time to really see anything that they've done. And obviously we're in a pandemic. So things are different, but every time that group or him or the work that they've done in the past is brought up, it like I get like happy inside, because that's exciting. And they were in the Bay where we were, and it's nice when people can grow in an art form that's like sort of like, or not an art form, but like in a round that's not defined. Mm-hmm. There's no like agency maybe like repping them, but they've like created this thing on their own. As far as other clowning that I've seen, I know there's a couple classes in LA. And now it's funny because clown is suggested to actors. Like it's like, just like a movement for actors. Now it's like clown for actors. It's like a thing. I don't know why I'm doing that, quotation, but it's a thing. It's great.
It's coming back around. I mean,
yeah, I hope so. But I haven't actually done any clowning in LA. I did, the Fringe Festival. Well, actually that's not true. I haven't done any live clowning in LA. I did the Fringe Festival, the Los Angeles Fringe. And there was a few clowns that did it, but we obviously recorded it from just different stuff. I think in the Bay Area, the clown community knows each other. And we know our work. So it was really exciting to see, a different style of work or different styles of work. But it was unfortunate because of the pandemic, I couldn't meet these clowns. I could talk to I was like chatting, like your act, it was dope, So it's still, I haven't got my toes in the dirt here in LA, but it's here. It's alive here. I've seen it. It exists.
So talking about clown more, what was just looking back over your career, specifically as a clown, what do you think is the weirdest gig you've ever had?
Oh yeah, let's go there. Okay, there's a couple. I one time was hired as a clown to do walk around at a Halloween party, but the problem with that is everybody is in costume and people thought I was just a person at the party, and they wanted me to do walk around where I was dusting people and interacting with the party members. It was like, I remember our first initial phone conversation. They were like, this is a group that can be kind of introverted, and we want them to be extroverted. So do things where you're pulling them in. But everybody thought I was a person at the party. And they were just, yeah, there was a lot of, I almost had the person running the stage make an announcement like, she is a clown. She's hired. Because every circle I would walk in, they were like, what are you, ma'am? What are you doing? And people were like, excuse me. So that was a weird gig and a really good note for myself. Like, costume parties, the red nose doesn't really stick out to them. And then I one time was asked to do a gig where I was going to play Michelle Obama, and I was supposed to juggle. And it wasn't clown Michelle Obama because I was like, that doesn't feel right to me. I personally love Michelle Obama. But they were like, no. She's just, it's sort of like Michelle Obama and she can do all these tricks. So I was like, awesome. I even like studied her because the sort of nerd in me was like, I want to know all the things and her college degrees. And I arrived at the gig. And first of all, we come up to this gig and it's there was a camel. They had rented animals. So there was like a camel outside and it was going to be this party. There was a camel outside and like different animals were out there. So it was like petting zoo vibe kind of. I was like, whoa, already that seems a little, at this very large house. And then we get there. There was another clown. I won't say his name, actor, clown friend. And he was going to play Obama. And we were like, awesome, we get to play these characters, but like, what is it? And we were kind of already, we're like, what is going on? So then we find out the party organizer's talking to us and he was like, we're scratching the juggling. You're going to have fake money and you're going to throw the money when people walk in the door and you're going to say, I just throw money around. And we were like, what? We found out that it was a Republican party and they wanted us to do caricatures of Barack and Michelle and fake throw money around. And the juggling thing was just, I guess, to know if we could throw fake money. I don't know. But I ended up, I'm not comfortable with that. And I'm not trying to say that this interview should be about if you're, right or left. We won't go into that, but I wasn't comfortable with doing that. And so I asked to leave. Cause it just wasn't made clear, what the gig was. And so I had to get the person who booked me on the phone. And it was like this whole mess, but yeah. So those were some interesting experiences.
God, that sucks so much.
I was really upset.
And just have the rug pulled out from under you like that. That utterly blows.
It was just like, wait a minute, what? So, it's good. It was good as a clown, and not having a union, to really, you are your own advocate in those gigs, and to ask questions. I was young and I was just happy to get a gig. So I was like, sure. And it's like, no, you got to advocate for yourself. And it is also okay to say, I'm not comfortable with this gig. I'm just not going to do it. If it doesn't sit right in your gut, don't do it.
Absolutely.
That's what I've learned. You don't have to,
Completely switching gears.
Yeah.
When you go to create clown pieces, what's your process? What is your process? How do you develop your work? And then secondary to that, how do you know work is good work before you get it in front of an audience?
Oh yeah, that's good. Okay. You must be a clown. No. My process, and Paulina Smith is the person I've worked the most with as a clown partner. So you should ask her. I know sometimes working with me is probably pretty tough for her because I sometimes can't put it into words. I just know when things don't work for me. I'm like, nah, it's not quite there. And then something will trigger it, and then I'll be into the work. And sometimes it's like an idea will trigger, or it's like I need this prop. She's got this prop in this thing, and that will like get me into what it is. But when I'm not finding it, I'm very much like, no, it's not, it doesn't feel right. And bless Paulina's heart. She's always, okay, let's try this. So props to her on that one. I think what I found for me when starting clown work, it's got to be something. So with clown, right? Like with acting, we have this script, and you need to follow it somewhat. You need to make it your own. It is your Juliet, like nobody else's, but it is Romeo and Juliet, right? At the end of the day, you're working off of this story that Shakespeare wrote, and you can take it to different places, but in a frame. But with clowning, we have this freedom, right? Like we don't have that frame. Structure helps. There are, things that we know, this rule of 3 is found to really work. So sometimes those are great. But maybe you break it and you do a rule of 9 or something. But I think for me, with that grand freedom, whatever story I'm telling as a clown, I need to feel connected to that story. So often my clowning is about is about being a female, or is about race and diversity. I've done a good deal of pieces about what it's like to be a Black woman, and even played with whiteface, and even played with these stories, these old stories of the prince saving me. So I found for me in the creation process, it actually, like we said, connects to something that's really been painful for me in my life, or something that's been difficult for me in my actual life. And then I get to play with it as a clown. So that's kind of my starting ground. Obviously, I've had gigs, or I've been asked to work with circuses where not that I can't, but where, with Circus Bella, it's more of a lighthearted show. Yeah. So if I, came on stage in whiteface, that's not maybe the place for that. Just because you don't really process with the audience afterwards, you know what I mean? It's not and that's not what I was hired there to do. So there are times when I need to create a clown act that's not based in maybe such a deep issue. And so when that happens, I still have found, and this is something that was challenging for me sometimes at Circus Bellas, I still have found I need to connect to a story. So, there were some clown acts where they're like, we want you to cover this transition, right? And this happens a lot to clowns. Just cover up what we're doing, and I'm like, with what's the, so I would kind of, so I would kind of create my story, my story of the whole show. They need me to cover up this transition. I need to be connected and rooted into something important. So I would find one thing. So one year it was like, I stumbled upon the circus and I was lost. So then every time I was on stage, I was like, who am I? Hi. And it gave me something, to be rooted in. And then I found my home. So it wasn't necessarily a deep issue. Like I'm not coming on a whiteface, but we all know what it is like to feel lost. And we all know that feeling when you find a person that makes you feel like home, or a place that makes you feel like home. So even though it was sort of lighthearted, for me, I had to connect to something that was real for me. And then your second question, knowing if something is good, I get into trouble with this because, okay, I used to say, and this is what I used to tell my students too, if it makes you laugh, it's dead on. You know what I mean? Like, if it's funny to me, I always perform it. I think it's funny. And I do think that's true. But one thing that happens to me sometimes when I'm performing is I get kind of cocky. And so I think it's so funny. And once I get into that, like, oh, just, in my head, I'm like, just wait till you see me do this thing. Once I do that, all of a sudden, the audience isn't laughing anymore. It's not funny to them. And so I heard Bill Irwin, who's an incredible clown and theater actor, speak one time. And he said, and this always stuck with me, I was like, that's what's happening to me. He told this story about this play where this guy was in a fight with his wife on stage, and then he asked for a cup of tea. And the audience would laugh every time he asked for the cup of tea. And then they stopped laughing. And the actor who was playing that couldn't figure out why. And his partner said, because you're not asking for the cup of tea anymore. You're asking for a laugh. Okay. And it always stuck with me, because when I would be on stage and I would think something was funny, I would be asking for the laugh, as opposed to being real and honest in the moment. And I think when you're real and honest, and when we watch people that are really honestly going through something, it's funny. It's really, really funny. So make sure you're asking for the cup of tea.
Yeah. Let's go back to whiteface for a second. If you're comfortable, okay, with this, are you comfortable talking about race in circus for a few minutes?
Sure.
How has it impacted you being Black and in circus arts? How has that worked within the circus community? And beyond being Black, have you felt any issues due to colorism, due to the specific tone of your skin within our circus community and coming up as a clown?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about it. And thank you for asking. Um, yeah, so specifically, I'll just start from whiteface, and then I'll go backwards. So when I did that originally, I actually got an email where someone was really uncomfortable with it, and we talked about buffoon work and stuff like that, pushing boundaries. And it felt, and my clown partner, again, Paulina, we talked about it, and she said some people, might feel a type of way. She was totally supportive of it. And for me, it felt like, I don't care. It's important enough to tell the story I was going to tell. And to me, it was a good boundary push. I've done things on stage where I'm like, that was a bad boundary push. I went too far. So I think it's good to know those limits, and you feel it right away on stage. I mean, I'm sure many clowns out there felt it, where you push a joke or you push something that's like, that went, okay, I went too far, reel it in. But the white face felt like a good boundary push. And the person who I had offended, even after I offended them, of course I held space for it and wrote back and listened to it. I still did not regret doing it, because it told the story I was trying to tell. So I just wanted to say that, sometimes you do get pushback when you take risks, and you can decide, sometimes maybe you have to apologize, and it's a big deal. And I apologized that she felt that way. I didn't apologize for my work, because I felt grounded in it and it felt right. So that little side note. So when I grew up in Smirkus, there was a small amount of Black performers, very few, in my 8 years there. So I started circus being pretty much the only Black person. And just really wanting, I was obsessed with Dominique Dawes. She was a gymnast at the time, an Olympic gymnast, and really wanting to see myself represented. So that was like a hunger I had for a long time. And as I got older, and I met a few, more Black artists in circus, not so many in clown, but more aerialists and acrobats and stuff like that. It made me realize how or how much representation matters. And I did a show with Circus Bella in Full Belly Farm one time, and mother came up to me, and she was in tears. And that year I had played Dee Dee was my clown character, and she was super Dee Dee, and so she was trying to do all these strong things through the show, and then I pull a kid from the audience at the end, and I can't lift this thing without their help, and we kind of highlight the power of children and how I couldn't have done it without them. And this mom was in tears, and she said, when I was performing that, her daughter, who was also Black, said, could I be in the circus? Does that mean that I could do this? And her mom realized she had never seen anybody who was Black in the circus. So sorry, this is long. It's very, lots of different pieces, but it has taught me, like, for myself, how important it is to be there, at times when I felt like, oh, this isn't a home for me. Even when I was little, like, I'm the only one here, it is a home for me. Just because we may not see a lot of Black people in circus, it doesn't mean that the circus isn't for Black people. And that's an important thing. And as I'm working with different groups to kind of talk about this issue and why there isn't more diversity in circus, and, how we can be more inclusive, and how the language of circus can change to be more inclusive and stuff like that. It is for everybody. And that is the heart of circus too, right? Like, traditional circus way back, it was like people who kind of, weren't fitting into other realms, and they would join the circus. The heart of circus is for everybody, anybody with any body, so Yeah, I'm not going to lie and say that circus is terribly diverse, because it's not. But I am going to say that these conversations are happening, and I'm really, really, for my sake, and for other young Black Tristans out there, I'm really happy that it's happening. And now we need to, start moving in that direction and making it more inclusive.
Great. Thank you for talking about that.
Yeah.
So what is and it doesn't just have to be clown, it can be from anywhere in your career. What's the performance, role, or project that you are the most proud of?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Most proud. I think there's two that are tied for me. I'm pretty hard on myself in general. So I'm not yet to the proud of my work yet. I can pat myself on the back when it's there, but I'm working on that. And I don't suggest anyone else is like that. Be hard on yourself, but be gentle too. So it's not going to be something that I've done, but there's been two. One time I performed 12th Night. No, not 12th Night. What is the Shakespeare play with Prosperous and his daughter? The Tempest. I performed The Tempest, and I played a very clowny character in that, named, is it Lucio? Is that right? No, Lucio's, oh my gosh. Hello. It'll come to me, the character I played, but he was super, super clowny, as many Shakespeare characters are. And we performed it in a prison for women, just for women. And it was one of the best experiences performing Shakespeare I've ever had, as far as, just a connection with the audience. And, there was conversation between us and them, and it would go out of the play and back into the play, and just being able to not let that derail us from the play, and embracing the audience and letting them have some voice in the midst of this really incredible story about, being locked up. That's part of that play. That was just one of, and not knowing what the next step is and being comfortable with that on stage. It was just one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. And then I would say, I went 3 years ago to Kenya, to Nairobi, to teach in the slums of Mathare. And I taught clowning and circus there, and with a company called Stories for Strength. And we performed in the street. They shut down one of the streets, and there's hundreds of people squished in, watching these children clown. And it was no text in the clowning bits, and just having these things that we've done here in America, these standard, like Dead and Alive, and these standard clown routines, and have them be represented in Nairobi and still make people laugh, was just one of the most beautiful moments of my life.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was.
That sounds so great.
Special.
Okay, before we wrap up, I just got a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
Which way to do this? What are your media influences, be they clowns or not? What are the clowns or media that influences the clown that you became?
Media meaning
anything.
Okay, that influenced me,
especially as a clown. Yeah.
So I'm old school. I still watch Chaplin in awe. I still, use Chaplin to teach my students clown. Just the profound storytelling without words is just so incredible. So definitely Chaplin. I had a while. It was like a good 2 years where I was like, I'm going to be the Black female Chaplin. It's going to happen, people. There was some pushback. People might not be ready for the black female chaplain, but I was like, it's me. Actually, the piece I did in the LA Fringe was I did it black and white. I like edited it so it was old timey film, and I was dressed sort of like Chaplin to an extent. And I got some interesting feedback, but we can talk about that later. I felt good about it. So Chaplin for sure. I think Lucille Ball is, a total clown, and from what I've heard from interviews with her, she was, and I don't know this, so nobody hold me to this, but she was actually very mathematic and mapped everything out, which is so funny because you look at her stuff and you're like, there's no way this is mapped out. Like it has to be happening in the moment for her because she's so hilarious and she's shoving chocolate in her mouth and like all these things are happening. But I guess she was very mapped out, and that's like an interesting path to take. Like some clowns maybe need to really be mapped out so that they can be free. You'll find your path out there to everyone, every clown out there. But her for sure. Who else? As far as clown, my friend Natasha Kaluza, who's an incredible clown, really inspired me because she is also does a lot of work behind and plays a huge range of characters. And she really taught me a lot in an important time of my life about commitment on stage. There was a show one time where I threw her a hula hoop. She was an old lady and I accidentally knocked off her wig and she didn't miss a beat. As the old lady, she was like, whoa, and went and got her wig, she went, my hair, and she put it on and she didn't miss a beat. So she really taught me about like, no matter what, she was in it. No questions asked, she was there. So I always look up to her and think about her. So those are three kind of influences. I wasn't ready for that question, Abraham.
What is a role or project you've always wanted to do but weren't able to, like due to budget constraints or casting or just logistics? A project you've always wanted to do but haven't been able to do yet?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So I guess this might be, well, I'm just going to say, so this is before Insecure came out. I was like, we never see. There's another show, Netflix show called Chewing Gum, and I don't know how I'm forgetting this.
Michaela Cole.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's also a writer and stars in most of the things. I May Destroy You as well is her show now. But Chewing Gum is so. There's clown all over it. I mean, everybody should watch that. Actually, the question before. Chewing Gum all the way. Every minute she was on screen in Chewing Gum, I learned from every second. So Chewing Gum and Insecure aside, I hadn't quite seen a show where we kind of allowed a Black woman to be awkward and goofy and maybe not sort of a cop or not tough or not a nurse or not, a period piece where they're a slave or going through a struggle, where we get to see this goofy side. And now we're kind of seeing it a little bit more, like allowing sort of Black women to also tell stories because, they're a part of more stories than slavery, even though they are a part of slavery too. Those stories are important, but other stories are too. So I have always had a really strong, urge to star in something like that where it gets to be goofy and it gets to be awkward and like a show I love is like Shrill, because this character, she's dealing with like body weight issues and things of that sort, but she's like awkward and doesn't know how to talk to guys and stuff like that. So like a show in that sort of realm, but starring a Black woman, and we kind of have it, but I think there's more to be had. There's more starring Black women on TV clown to be had.
Absolutely. Okay, 2 more questions before we go.
Yeah, sure.
What are you working on now? What are you doing? What's going on?
So, I think we're all, to all the listeners out there, it's a real time, I think, to figure out like, what is art? What do I, as a performing artist, what do I do? And I've embraced this as a time of reflection and a time to, like almost looking at it as a gift to kind of redefine yourself, as an artist that performs live, or on screen, because there's less of it now and performing live is non-existent. So I think we have this gift of getting to figure out how we want to do it when it happens again. So there's been a lot of that going on. I also came to LA, was just getting my toes in the dirt, and then the pandemic hit. So that's been interesting too, because LA is it's a different thing. Film and television is faster than I'm used to. I'm used to sitting in character. I'm used to, I played Gretchen, this clown character, for years. I played her for years. So if I was in a Q&A and didn't know what was going on, I knew I could stay in that character no matter what. You could hit me with a car and I would be like, still Gretchen. So, it's been a lot of me. This is what it's been a lot of recently, is me knowing my worth, defining it for myself, and knowing any situation that I walk into, clown, theater, film, television, walking into it with years of practice, and walking into it giving myself the grace, or giving myself the permission to say I deserve to be here. And I think as a performer in any realm, clown for sure, but in any realm, get to a place where you're worthy of what you're doing, because you wouldn't be there if you weren't. And I think, what I found in LA is, you're going to get less of that maybe from the other side. So it's even more important to really have it for yourself. So that's been kind of the soul work I've been doing, is like knowing my worth. And then there's been some gigs here or there. I shot a commercial for Home Depot, which was nice, financially, maybe not the most soul fulfilling work, but financially was nice. And then I just shot on a television show on Netflix, a sitcom show. And it was, I was just a co-star. So I just had one day of shooting, but it was so clowny. I mean, my character, I won't say too much until it comes out, but I was a chef and something went wrong, and it was like totally like stereotypical chef clown act. I mean, it was. And so I'm using this clown work now here in Hollywood, which is just so nice, and everyone on set was like, wow, you just jumped right into that. And I'm like, I've been doing this for a while, so there's some movement happening. But I think, one thing I'm realizing is, like, even here in LA, which is new to me, and it had always felt like this different thing, I'm still clowning. I'm still over here clowning.
Okay, last question, and then I'll let you go. If you could tag 3 more people to be on the podcast, who would they be?
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, I think you should talk to my friend Chris Grabber. He is a clown from Smirkus, and he's here in LA, and he kind of holds it down for clown stuff in LA. He actually, when I first moved here, he got me, I forgot totally about this clown gig. He got me a clown gig right off the bat at this theater, at this movie theater that did clowning before they actually showed the movie here in LA. So Chris Grabber for sure. There's another clown called, what's his name? We taught together in New York. Quany. Quany.
Okay.
And he's a more, our clowning style is different. And that's why I think it's good that you talk to him. He's a more, he's a more in the realm of, I don't know what you would call my realm. It might just be Tristan made up. But he's more in the ringling round of clowning. Okay. But he's been performing through the pandemic on Zoom. I saw one of his live Zoom shows, and killing it on Zoom, which is incredible to me. Because that's hard. You want to like do something and hear a laugh, So I would definitely talk to Quany, and I'll send you his information. And then who else? Gosh. Have you talked to Bree Crabtree?
I have not.
I think she the thing about Brie for me is like she's such a great clown, and then her skill work. Every time I go on Instagram, she has learned a new skill. Her discipline has got to be like, I want to listen to that podcast. How do you do it? And it like goes from like impossible skills to just little like flip the cup and it lands on the bridge of her ear, and like these little tricks that are incredible, and then these like so those are my 3 suggestions.
Thank you. I'll definitely reach back out to you to get contact information. And Tristan, Thank you so much for joining us. We're all done.
We're all done.
Wonderful
Thank
work.
You.
Kill the people. I hope you have an excellent time in LA.
Thank you, Abraham. Thanks for asking all that stuff.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.
Thank you for joining us today on Ridiculous Life of a Clown. This program, as always, is made possible by your support through our Patreon, which you can find through www.picklewater.com. Theme song by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech Music.